Cadet Kim Hannah's boots made soft clicking sounds on the metal floor as she walked off the transport ship. The space station was huge and bright, with lights everywhere that made everything look clean and new. She had never seen anything like it before. All around her, other new students were walking to their rooms. They moved so smoothly and easily. The tall Altarians had shiny silver skin that seemed to glow under the lights. When they walked, it looked like they were dancing. The Vex people were made of what looked like living crystal, and they made beautiful bell sounds with each step. The gas-formed nebulans floated just above the ground like colorful clouds with faces. But it was the Fenrari that caught everyone's attention. They looked like giant wolves walking on two legs. Their fur was dark gray, and their eyes were bright gold. They moved together like a hunting pack, always watching everything around them. Other students stepped aside when they passed. Hannah pulled at her uniform, trying to make it fit better. It felt too tight in some places, and too loose in others. Everything here was made for the other alien species, not for humans. She felt clumsy and out of place. At the first meeting for new students, Hannah tried to use the computers like everyone else. The screens were made for the Altarians' long, thin fingers. Hannah's hands were short and thick, made for grabbing things and holding tools. She pressed the wrong buttons and made mistakes. The other students did everything perfectly on their first try. A tall Altarian instructor watched Hannah struggle with the computer. "Humans will need special training," she said quietly to another teacher. "Their evolution is still very primitive." Behind Hannah, she heard someone laugh. She turned and saw 4 Fenrari students watching her. The biggest one, with the brightest gold eyes, stepped forward. "Look at this," he said in a voice like a growl. "Another primitive from the Death Planet. I am Kethfer. I wonder how long you will last here, little human." The other 3 Fenrari moved closer. Their names were Morgan, Valthor, and Zephyr. They surrounded Hannah like wolves around a sheep. Their gold eyes looked her up and down, judging her strength. Hannah did not move or speak, but inside her mind, she was doing something the Fenrari did not expect. She was watching them just as carefully as they watched her. Her eyes counted their numbers, measured their height and weight, and noticed how they moved. Her brain, shaped by millions of years of survival on a dangerous planet, was preparing for threats. The first test came 3 days later. All the new students had to do a survival exercise. The teachers put them in a room that felt like the worst places in the galaxy. The temperature went from burning hot to freezing cold. The air was thin and hard to breathe. Poisonous plants grew from the walls. The Altarians had to help each other walk. The Vex made stressed ringing sounds. The Nebulans could barely keep their cloud forms together. Even the proud Fenri moved carefully, using all their senses to avoid danger. But Hannah walked through it all, like she was taking a walk in a park. The heat did not make her sweat. The cold did not make her shiver. The thin air did not make her tired. The poisonous plants did not scare her. She had grown up on Earth, where everything was trying to kill everything else all the time. The teachers watched through cameras and wrote notes. "Subject shows unusual resistance to environmental stress," one wrote. "Likely due to adaptation to hostile homeworld conditions." They did not understand what they were really seeing. They thought Hannah was just lucky to come from a hard planet. They did not know that Earth had created the galaxy's most dangerous hunter. They saw her thick bones and muscles and thought she was clumsy. They did not know those same features made her almost impossible to hurt. They watched her move through their test like it was easy and thought she was just tough. They did not know that her calm face hid a brain that could track a dozen threats at once and plan how to deal with each one. After the test, Kethver and his pack watched Hannah with new interest. She had done too well. She had made them look weak. "The Deathworlders trying to show off," Valthor said with anger in his voice. "We need to teach her the proper order of things," Morgan agreed. Kethver's gold eyes narrowed. "Yes, She needs to learn her place. But as they planned their lesson for the human, they made a mistake that predators throughout the galaxy had made for millions of years. They looked at Hannah and saw prey. They saw someone small and weak who needed to be put in her place. They did not see Earth's apex predator, wearing the face of civilization, but carrying the soul of the hunt. They did not know that their primitive Deathworlder had been shaped by a planet where only the most dangerous survived. Soon, they would learn what it meant to corner something that had never learned to be prey. 3 months had passed since Hannah first stepped onto the space station. She had learned the daily routine and found her place among the other students. But that place was not very high. In computer classes, the Altarians understood everything quickly. Their long silver fingers danced over the controls like they were born to use them. Hannah had to study for hours to learn what they picked up in minutes. Her test scores were always in the middle of the class, never at the top. The Vex students were even better at the peacekeeping classes. They could sense emotions and solve arguments without even trying. When they talked to each other, their crystal bodies made beautiful music that somehow made everyone feel calm. Hannah had to memorize rules from books, while they just knew what to do naturally. But when it came to physical training, something strange happened. The obstacle courses that left other students gasping for air were easy for Hannah. She climbed walls, jumped gaps, and lifted weights like it was nothing. The teachers watched her with confused looks on their faces. Her performance is unusual, one instructor told another. She shows no stress during activities that challenge our best students. Another human student had arrived 2 weeks after Hannah. His name was Park Minho, and he struggled even more than she did with the book learning. During a very hard science class about space and energy, he whispered to Hannah, "How can they expect us to keep up? These other species were born for this kind of thinking. Their brains work differently than ours." Hannah looked at the equations on the screen that might as well have been written in ancient alien languages. "We learn to survive," she said quietly. "That is what humans do." But she felt the heavy weight of being one of the first humans at this famous school. If she failed, it would look bad for all humans everywhere. Everyone would think her people were not smart enough for space. The Fenrari pack had made bothering Hannah into a daily activity. They would walk into her when she was going to class and act like it was an accident. During lunch, they would crowd around her table until she had no room to eat. They made comments about Deathworld primitives, just loud enough for her to hear, but not loud enough for teachers to notice. In fighting practice, they worked together to make her look bad. One would attack from the front, while another came from behind. They stayed just inside the rules so they would not get in trouble. But they made sure she always looked clumsy and slow. Instructor Zalmoth was an old Altarian who had been teaching for many years. His silver skin had darker marks that showed his age and experience. He watched the Fenrai students interact with Hannah and felt something was wrong, but he could not prove they were breaking any rules. "They followed the letter of the law," he told another teacher. "But something about their behavior feels dangerous." The other teacher, a floating Nebulan, agreed. "The human shows remarkable restraint. Most students would have reported them by now." What they did not know was that Hannah was not being patient because she was weak. She was waiting and watching, the way her ancestors had watched herds of animals for days before making a move. Everything changed on a quiet night when most students were sleeping. Hannah had taken her study materials to the lower levels of the station where it was peaceful. These areas had big windows that looked out into space and fewer people walking around. She found a small table near one of the windows and spread out her books. The stars outside were beautiful and helped her think. She was trying to understand a difficult lesson about alien languages when she heard footsteps behind her. The Fenrari pack had followed her. In the dim light of the lower level, their gold eyes seemed to glow like fire. They moved in perfect formation, spreading out to surround her table. There were no cameras here, no teachers, no other students. Kethver stepped forward, his lips pulled back to show his sharp teeth. Finally, he said in a low growl, "Time to teach the little scavenger where she belongs in the food chain." Morgan moved to her left. Velthar took the right. Zephyrin blocked the way back to the lifts. They had done this before, Hannah realized. They knew exactly how to trap someone with no escape. Hannah looked at each of them calmly, then slowly closed her study tablet. She placed it carefully on the table and stood up. Her movements were controlled and deliberate, like someone getting ready for something they had done many times before. Inside her chest, something old and dangerous began to wake up. It was something that had been sleeping since humans first looked up at the stars and decided to leave their home planet. Something that her people had carried from the hot plains of Africa, where they first learned to hunt in packs. Something that had made them the most successful predators their world had ever seen. The Fenrari thought they were cornering a weak prey animal. They had no idea they had just woken up something far more dangerous than anything their world had ever produced. The Fenrari pack expected to see fear in Hannah's eyes. They had done this many times before with other students. First came the fear, then the begging, then the running away. It was the natural order of things. Predators hunted, prey ran away. But when Hannah stood up and looked at them, there was no fear in her dark eyes. There was something else. Something that made the hair on the back of Kethfer's neck stand up. Though he did not understand why. Hannah moved. It was not the panicked scrambling of a scared animal. It was not the desperate fighting of someone who knew they were going to lose. It was something completely different. It was the movement of a hunter who had been pretending to be prey. Kethfer lunged forward with his claws extended, expecting to pin the small human against the wall. But Hannah was not there anymore. She had stepped to the side so smoothly it looked like she had known exactly what he was going to do before he did it. Her hand shot out and hit a spot on his neck that made his whole body go numb. He crashed into the wall where she had been standing. Morgan came at her from the left, his powerful legs pushing him forward in a leap that should have knocked her down. But Hannah dropped low, sweeping her leg across his path. His own speed worked against him as he flipped over and hit the floor hard. The sound of his body hitting the metal was loud in the quiet observation area. Velthor and Zephyrin tried to attack her at the same time from different directions. This was their best pack tactic. No prey animal could handle attacks from multiple angles at once. But Hannah moved between them like water flowing around rocks. She grabbed Velthor's arm and used his own momentum to throw him into Zephyrin Bay, collided with a crash, and both went down. The whole fight lasted only 90 seconds. When it was over, 3 Fenrari were lying on the floor, either unconscious or groaning in pain. Only Kethver was still standing, but he had backed away until his shoulders touched the far wall. His golden eyes were wide with something he had never felt in his entire life. Fear, not the respectful caution he felt around larger predators, but real, deep fear, the kind that made his whole body want to run away as fast as possible. Hannah stood in the middle of the observation area, breathing normally. There were no scratches on her skin, no tears in her uniform, no blood. She looked exactly the same as she had before the fight started. Except for one thing. The way she stood was different now. She stood like something dangerous that was choosing not to kill you. The emergency alarm started blaring a few minutes later. Someone had finally noticed the fight on the security cameras. Heavy footsteps echoed through the corridors as station security ran toward the observation deck. When they arrived, they found a scene that confused them. Cadet Kim Hannah was standing calmly next to a table with her study materials still spread out on it. 3 Fenray cadets were on the floor around her, alive but hurt. The 4th, Kethfer, was pressed against the far wall, staring at her with wide eyes. "What happened here?" demanded Security Chief Burden. He was a Tarak, with skin like gray stone and muscles that could crush metal. He had broken up many fights between students over the years. Hannah looked at him with the same calm expression she used in class. The 4 Fenrari cadets approached me during my study period. They initiated physical contact that was not permitted by station regulations. I defended myself using appropriate force. Her voice was steady and factual. She spoke like she was giving a report on a science experiment, not describing a fight where she had defeated 4 trained predators by herself. Chief Burden had seen many fights, but never anything like this. Usually, when someone won a fight, they were breathing hard, shaking with adrenaline, maybe bleeding or bruised. Hannah looked like she had just finished reading a book. He looked at the 3 Fenrari on the floor, then at Kethver, who was still pressed against the wall. "Did you attack this cadet?" Kethver opened his mouth, but no words came out. How could he explain what had just happened? How could he tell anyone that a small human had moved like death itself, striking with precision? That made their pack tactics look clumsy. The incident report went all the way up to the station commander. But more importantly, it landed on the desk of Dr. Nathera, the station's expert on alien biology. She had studied hundreds of species from across the galaxy, but the report about the human cadet made her curious. She pulled up Earth's files from the Galactic database. What she found there made her question everything she thought she knew about humans. The files talked about Earth being a death world with dangerous animals and harsh weather. But as she read deeper, she began to understand something that had been overlooked. Earth was not just a dangerous place where humans had learned to survive. Earth was a place where humans had become the most dangerous thing on the entire planet. And now one of those apex predators was walking among them, wearing the uniform of a cadet and pretending to be civilized. The galaxy was about to learn what that really meant. The meeting room was full of the most important people on the station. Commanders, instructors, and security chiefs all sat around a big table, waiting to decide what would happen to Hannah after the fight. This was supposed to be a simple disciplinary hearing, where they would punish a student for breaking rules. Instead, it became something that had never happened before in the history of the Academy. Dr. Nethara stood at the front of the room. She was a Vex, made of living crystal that changed colors when she was excited. Right now, she was glowing brighter than anyone had ever seen her. "We need to talk about what we found in the Earth files," she said, her crystal body flickering with different colors. "We made a big mistake when we classified humans." She pressed a button, and pictures appeared on the big screen behind her. Images of Earth's animals, its landscapes, and its history filled the room. "We called Earth a death world because it has dangerous weather and deadly animals," Dr. Nethera continued. "We thought humans were victims who barely survived on their terrible planet, but we were completely wrong." The pictures changed to show humans hunting in groups, using tools, and tracking animals across huge distances. The officers in the room leaned forward, paying close attention. "Humans are not victims of their world's dangers," she said. "They are the danger. They are the most successful predators their planet has ever created." Commander Velkorian, the tall silver Altarian who ran the academy, looked shocked. "Explain what you mean, Doctor." Dr. Nethera's crystal form sparkled as she brought up more information. "Look at these facts. Humans can run for days without stopping, chasing prey, until the animals collapse from exhaustion. They use tools, not just for building, but for hunting and war. They hunt in coordinated groups, planning attacks that can last for weeks." The room was completely quiet as she continued. "Most importantly, they eliminated every other large predator on their planet. Not through competition, but through systematic hunting. Saber-toothed cats, giant bears, massive wolves, humans hunted them all to extinction." Security Chief Burdham shifted in his chair, his rocky skin making scratching sounds. "But the human cadets seem so calm and peaceful." "That is exactly the point," Dr. Nethera said, her excitement making her glow even brighter. "Watch the security video again, but this time understand what you are really seeing." The screen showed the fight between Hannah and the Fenri pack. But now, with Dr. Nethera's explanation, it looked completely different. She is not fighting like an angry student, the doctor explained. Look at her movements. She watches all 4 opponents at once. She calculates their attack patterns. She uses their own coordination against them. And when it is over, she returns to normal immediately. This is not emotion. This is professional hunting behavior. Commander Valkorian watched the video with new eyes. She knew exactly what they would do before they did it. Yes, Dr. Nethera agreed. Her ancestors spent millions of years learning to read the behavior of dangerous animals. The pack used tactics that worked against prey species. But they were facing something that had evolved specifically to hunt pack predators. The investigation into the fight revealed that the Fenrari students had been breaking many rules. They had been harassing Hannah for months, coordinating attacks during training, and finally cornering her alone in a place with no witnesses. But this news became less important than the bigger discovery about humans. Within a few days, strange things started happening around the station. The other predator species cadets, the ones who had always acted tough and dominant, began avoiding Hannah. They did not do it on purpose, or even understand why they were doing it. When she walked into a room, the Fenri students would find reasons to leave. The sharp-clawed Zerathi would suddenly remember they had somewhere else to be. The massive Corvan predators would step aside in hallways without thinking about it. At the same time, the prey species students started doing the opposite. The gentle Altarians would sit closer to her during lectures. The nervous Vex would seek her out during stressful training exercises. The small Polari students would cluster around her during mealtimes. None of them understood why they were doing this. Their brains were following programming that had been written into their genes over millions of years. The predator species recognized something more dangerous than themselves and gave it respect. The prey species recognized a protector and sought its safety. Hannah noticed these changes, but accepted them the same way she accepted everything else, calmly, and without making a big deal about it. She did not know that she had completely changed how the social order worked on the station, in the Academy's records. They quietly updated Earth's classification. It was still listed as a Deathworld, but now there was a new note attached to the file warning. Native species, Homo sapiens classified as Apex Persistence Predator. Approach with appropriate caution. The galaxy was slowly beginning to understand that humans were not just another species trying to join the galactic community. They were something far more dangerous that had decided to be civilized instead of remaining predators. For now, that choice was holding, but everyone hoped it would continue to hold. 6 months had passed since the night that changed everything. Now Ensign Kim Hannah stood in the Great Hall of the Academy, wearing her new uniform with shiny badges that showed she had graduated. The lights from above made the metal shine like stars. All around her, hundreds of new officers from dozens of different species celebrated their graduation. But there was something different about how they treated Hannah now. The predator species, the Fenrari, the Zerathi, the Corvan, kept a respectful distance, not because they were ordered to, but because their instincts told them to. The prey species did the opposite. The gentle Altarians, the nervous Vex, and the small Polari clustered near her during the ceremony. They felt safer when she was close, though they could not explain why. Another human cadet named Li Jiho walked up to her after the ceremony ended. He had arrived at the academy for months after Hannah, when the teachers were still trying to understand what humans needed to learn properly. Everything is different now because of what you did, he told her with a big smile. The teachers changed how they teach us. They made special programs for human students. I actually passed my technical classes because of the new methods. It was true. After Dr. Nethera's report about human psychology, the Academy had completely changed how they taught human students. Instead of expecting them to learn like other species, they created new methods that worked with human brains. More humans were applying to join the Academy now that they knew they could succeed. But the real test of how much had changed came during the final war games. These were the last big exercises before graduation, designed to test everything the cadets had learned. Hannah was chosen to lead a team with members from 5 different species through a combat scenario in a fake city. The exercise was supposed to be difficult, but safe. However, something went wrong with the computer system that controlled the training. Robots? Instead of acting like practice enemies, the security drones started behaving like real threats. System malfunction, announced the computer voice. Training exercise has become genuine emergency situation. The mechanical drones were designed to look like dangerous aliens, with metal claws and energy weapons. Now they were hunting the cadet teams for real, trying to capture or harm them. Hannah's team members, 2 Altarians, a Vex, a Nebulan, and a Corvon, all turned to look at her when the announcement played. Without anyone saying anything, they all knew she should lead them. She moved through the fake city streets with the same calm efficiency she had shown that night 6 months ago, when the metal predators appeared around corners or dropped from buildings. She did not panic or shout orders. She simply dealt with them. The most amazing thing was that the drones themselves seemed to recognize something dangerous about her. These machines were programmed with basic threat recognition software, designed to identify and respond to different levels of danger. As Hannah advanced through their positions, the drones actually began backing away from her. Their artificial intelligence systems were registering something that made them classify her as a higher-level threat than they were programmed to handle. "Impossible," whispered one of the Altarian cadets as they watched a group of combat drones retreat from Hannah without her even fighting them. Captain Morthic, a Fenrari officer, watching the exercise from the control room, made notes in his report. He had been a soldier for 20 years and had never seen anything like it. "She does not just fight the enemy," he wrote. "She controls the entire battlefield just by being there." The machines recognize her as something more dangerous than they are, even though she has not attacked them. When the exercise ended and all the cadets were safe, Hannah received her final assignment. She would be going back to Earth to join the Special Operations Division of Earth Defense Command. As she prepared to leave the station, many people came to say goodbye. The biggest surprise was when Kethfer approached her. The former leader of the Fenrari pack now wore the uniform of a junior officer, but he looked different than he had 6 months ago. More humble, more careful. "Ensign Kim," he said formally, using her new rank. "I want to apologize for how my pack and I treated you when you first arrived. We thought your restraint meant you were weak. We were very wrong." Hannah looked at him with the same calm expression she always wore. "Everyone learns from their experiences," she said simply. "You learned, I learned, the Academy learned, as her transport ship prepared to take her back to Earth. Hannah thought about everything that had happened. She had never tried to be anything special. She had just been herself, a human trying to learn and succeed in a place designed for aliens. The galaxy had needed time to understand what it meant to have humans among them, not as victims from a dangerous world, but as the apex predators of that world, who had chosen to be civilized. She was going home now, but she would not be the same person who had left. She was humanity's first real ambassador to the stars, carrying with her the knowledge that humans had finally found their place in the galaxy, and that place was at the top of the food chain.